Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm Bruce Waller, your host, where we're talking to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in the community. What are these leaders doing to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? What do they do to accelerate every day? And today I'm talking to a very special guest, my good friend, Kelvin Goss. Kelvin is a dynamic leader in the HR profession. He's the executive director and HR business partner for Delek U.S. Holdings. He's a speaker and he's an author of the book, Be Brilliant in the Basics. I want to welcome you, Kelvin, to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, Bruce. Thank you for having me on your podcast today.
Absolutely. So Kelvin and I go back to the HR Southwest conference where I got to hear him speak on the stage, and I was so impressed. The very first time I heard you speak, you were talking about networking. I said, you know what? I've got to know this guy, and we've gotten to know each other. I guess over the last 6 to 8 months, I got a chance to speak at Delek, and that was back in January. It seems like forever ago. So what have you been doing for the last 3 or 4 months, Kelvin?
Believe it or not, I truly it seemed like a whirlwind. We kind of like got hit with an uppercut and a body blow, because the pandemic was the uppercut, and then oil and gas, as you know, got hit. So when you look at prices per barrels of gallons of oil, it got hit pretty hard, Bruce. And so from that perspective, really your leadership had to kick in strongly and say, how do we rebound from this and really take our lessons learned and turn it into something positive. So it's been an exploratory event. I've learned a lot in these last 3-4 months on how to be very agile, how to be fluid, and how to really take something that has been so dramatic and how do you make something prosperous come from.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting to know you more on this podcast, and so others can get to know you more. We're going to talk today a lot about being brilliant in the basics. And for those that are listening to the podcast, I'm holding up a copy of Kelvin's book, and we're going to talk about that on the podcast. But first, I want to talk about your story, Kelvin. I want folks to get to know you. I've read your book, so I know a little bit about your background, but I would love for you to just start off the podcast. First of all, I just want you to share what's your role at Delek US, and how big is the company, and what's that look like?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Well, my role actually, as I was hired at Delek about 3 years ago, I had an opportunity to come in as executive human resource business partner, and I oversee all of the retail stores. So we had, when I started, around 300 stores. So we had 7-Elevens in West Texas, Albuquerque, New Mexico, El Paso area. And I had the privilege to oversee all HR belonged to me. And so I had about 6 to 7 direct reports. And as we had an opportunity to introduce a kind of a new style of leadership, it was an acquisition when they brought me on. With Alon. So it's been a great opportunity to enjoy meeting people in all types of logistic places. And really from a C-store perspective, I came from big box, from Fortune 500s, from Walmart, Sam's, Best Buys. But it was really great to connect with the C-store industry and individuals to run those stores who have done an amazing job of day in, day out, taking care of customers in their local community. So I had the privilege to oversee that from an HR perspective, but just this week, Bruce, I was promoted and moved into a senior director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm excited to bring that to this company and oversee that for the entire company. Our company it actually has, from a population perspective, about 4,000 employees, and they never had a person oversee D&I. And so what a great time when you look at today's emotional climate and the environment, and focusing on, not only diversity, but that equity where fairness and treatment, and then inclusion where everyone should bring their whole self to work. I've always enjoyed that side of the business. Actually had it incorporated as an HR leader, but now I get to solely focus on how do I help implement some change in the company and continue to make Delek a great Fortune 500 company.
I got to tell you, I'm excited for you, Kelvin. That is absolutely fantastic. Congratulations on a new chapter for you, my friend. You're going to do well. They say leaders stand up and stand out during times of crisis and challenges, pandemic. And you are definitely someone that has definitely done that. I've seen some of your videos along the way. So being in this role, you're going to do an outstanding job. Sounds like you're really excited about it too.
I'm super excited. You know, ultimately, it's a people business, and most organizations are. So when we have an opportunity to connect with people and really get the best out of people at work and to help them get the best out of themselves at home, you can help create it. It's an inspirational environment to work in, and that's where my head's at, and that's where I truly want to play in that space in a large way. And to do it for the refineries and for the retail side is going to be a great challenge that I'm ready and up for.
Well, you're going to do an outstanding job. I can't wait to see the road ahead. I want to rewind. I want to rewind just a bit, Kelvin. I want the listeners and the viewers to hear the Kelvin Goss story. I want them to hear where'd you grow up and how did you get into HR? What is it? I'm pretty sure that path wasn't a straight path, as it isn't for most leaders. But tell us that story.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you know, Bruce, I always had a passion for retail. And growing up as a child, I grew up in a really small town called Wolf City, Texas. Population 1,600. And honestly, everyone knew everyone. So there was this one little local grocery store called Woody. And there was a store manager there named Daniel. I'll never forget it. And his name was Mr. Daniels. And so he knew for sure at an early age I wanted to work there. So when I was like 12, 13, I would go in the store after school and face up the aisles and straighten up the bananas or tomatoes in this little grocery store, which was probably all of about 2,500 square feet, I would imagine. I don't know. But at the same time, every day after school, I would stop by and say, hey, Mr. Daniels, could I please come in and just kind of straighten up? I don't want any pay. And on my 16th birthday, if I've done a good job between 13 and 16, would you give me a chance to go to work for you? So I would stop by and I'd do that just from, you know, I get out of school, face up a couple of aisles, straighten up labels, and then let him know, hey, go check it out. And then on my 16th birthday, I went in and I said, hey, here's my application. I've been coming in the last couple of years to let you know I really want to be a great employee for you. And he hired me on the spot. I think I was making a couple dollars an hour, but it was the world's greatest job. So I was so happy to get paid for what I had been doing for free for a couple of years. So that's kind of how it got started. And from there, I truly just kept a passion for retail and trying to understand what it was like to connect with a customer and the employees. And it just was a great road ahead for me, I thought, because I got energy from watching customers come in and laughing and joking with them to make sure they were happy, and also providing a great product and service. So learned a lot in that little store.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I was just curious. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time now, right? You've
Yes.
been leading, you've been pursuing your goals and ambitions and having success. Was there a time? I mean, was it early on? Maybe it was later. Was there a time where you said, you know what, I found my purpose in what I want to do in my career? I call it finding your lane. Can you kind of tell us that story when was it one thing that triggered that event, or has it been little things that built on each other? Tell me when you found your lane.
I think that's a great question, Bruce, because I think there's different things that define us in our character. And over the course of time, when I had an opportunity to start in that small grocery store, I realized I wouldn't stay there. But ultimately, my goal, believe it or not, they had like 3 locations in different cities and about the same size. And I would talk to the owner when he would come by and say, hey, remember my name, because I want you to know I really want to do this in a larger scale. And so even though it was a small convenience store, I knew I wanted to do more. And over a course of time, I tried to put myself in position to learn more about the business other than just stocking shelves, cleaning the parking lot, taking in groceries in and out. I said, there's more to this, and I want to understand it as an art. And over the course of time, I had a chance to move into some larger stores after I graduated high school to do the same. And what I saw, Bruce, this is 4 to 5 decades now. 4 decades I've been working on this. Don't want to go too deep there on but about 4 decades of learning. And what I realized, you never should get tired of learning. And so as I had a chance to progress in smaller organizations up to Fortune 500s, you pick and choose the best leadership characteristics from people who you really admire and respect. And there's every single day you can learn something, whether it's something not to do from a leader or something to do really well. And so when you ask the question, what's that defining moment? I would say it was probably right back in 1997. I was given my first opportunity to run my own store. And I realized very quick that you needed a supporting cast with the same objective. And if you got really good at clear direction, great alignment, and then clarity of that message, and when you think about that, given a clear, I call it the DAC approach: direction, alignment, and commitment. So when you get clear on your direction, you get alignment from the team, and you get commitment from the team, then goals shrink and you achieve those pretty simply. And I saw that come into place in the first store that I had, on a store that people kind of had given up on based off the area logistically, kind of wrote it off. And I had an opportunity to go in that same area and turn that store around to be a success story. And I realized quickly it's not so much about the leader, but it's how the leader treats the associates in that store. And so from there, I started to run larger volume stores for organizations, and I had the privilege to run some pretty large volume stores with about $1 million a week and some HEBs, and as I moved into Best Buys, et cetera. But what I really enjoyed was no matter where I went, it was still the same philosophy: people first, profits will follow. So
People first, profits will fall. I love that. I love how you used DAC for direction and alignment and clarity, and just your approach with all of that. That's fantastic. But what I heard you say that really kind of leads me into my next thought was you said it's all about a supporting cast. And I've always talked about, it's all about surrounding yourself with the right people. And you're talking about the supporting cast. Like, here you're having success, but you're not going to have this success without the supporting cast. So I would love for you to share who are some of the supporting cast, let's call them mentors, that's been part of your life. Obviously from the grocery store days, you've had that. And so share with that, like who are some of the mentors that have helped you, and what were some common traits about them that helped you along the way?
Up until I actually started working for Sam's Club and Walmart, I had a lot of mentors, but I never had an official mentor. And what I would share with anyone today is you need to have someone who's truly identified as your mentor. And for me, that person happened in 2008, 2010. I got to really know him a little better, but in 2012, she officially became my mentor, and she was the chief diversity officer for Walmart. So she was pretty much the right-hand person to the CEO and giving direction around people and talent. And we met and we just clicked and we hit it off. And she actually officially said, "Kelvin, would you like to be my mentee?" And I had, thought about, hey, I've had mentors that weren't official, but this is an official mentor program. And she had it down to a science where it was a structure. It was a year-long program. You met once a month. You had accountability. She had accountability. And both people had to live up to it. But she could keep that meeting to 30 minutes precisely. And I would walk away feeling like on cloud nine, like I had just heard the best insight in the world. And it was someone you could be open with, share your opportunities with. They don't really judge you, but give you direction and ideas and help you kind of figure it out. Like, they give you the pieces to the puzzle and you get to put it together. And what I loved about her style is she really invested in you. For that 30 minutes, there was no one else on earth more important than you. And believe it or not, Bruce, even though she has retired from Walmart and has moved on to be, doing greater things, the mentee program that she has, it's kind of an interchange of encouragement where, it's a virtuous teaching cycle. So the teacher is teaching you, and you also get to teach the teacher with things that you may be a subject matter expert on as well. So believe it or not, over the course of time, she has given me so much great direction that I'm passionate about expressing how much I care about sharing Orloff. Because I wouldn't probably have the opportunities I had today if she literally wouldn't have put her arm around me and took the time to help me understand, to look at things through a broader perspective, a larger scope, versus in having tunnel vision focused on just whatever chaotic moment is happening, because there's always going to be chaos, but you have to have the ability to see the larger picture, the bigger picture, versus that narrow scope. So when she took that time to do that and instill that, which is my most precious asset, is our time, when she took her time to instill in me that wisdom over the course of time, I truly can't tell you the value I could put a price on that, because she gave me advice around leadership that I would have got nowhere else in a book. I wouldn't have got it anywhere from a podcast. I would have only gotten this from that one-on-one individual experience that she had, and I couldn't put a price on it. And believe it or not, to this day, when we still meet for our mentor programs, even though she's gone on, I inspired her to write her first book. and she just did her and another one of her mentees, and she just did a phenomenal job of getting it off the ground, exposing it. I'm just so super excited for Ms. Sharon Olaf and her new career, and she's left Walmart now, the largest retail ship in the city, to go and do some more great things. So really excited. So yeah, without that, I wouldn't have had it. I had some other smaller mentors, but she gets the credit for taking the time to say, time out, let's make this on purpose.
I love how you talk about it's a two-way street. But I'm curious, Kelvin, was there some intimidation there? I mean, she's like a top level leader, right? And you're like, I mean, was there any intimidation at all where you're like, oh my gosh, if I don't, if I don't hold myself accountable, or is she going to notice some flaws, or was there any of that?
Yeah, there was some intimidation there. When you think about a mentor-mentee relationship, there's always be intimidation. But what I loved about it, she set that pattern from the beginning. Here's the expectations. Mm-hmm. And you can't only get out of this relationship what you put in. It's kind of like an ATM, right? If you don't make deposits, you can't go stick that card in and expect you to get something out. It's the same way with that relationship. So the intimidation for me, she kind of took off the hierarchy of her title and really met me on my level to help me understand, Kelvin, there's a larger opportunity to grow your career, but here's where it starts. You got to get good at the basics. When you get really good at the basics, and then you honestly can become brilliant in the larger aspects of what you do. So that's where it started.
So now I got a little bit of setup for your book. I love it. But before I go there, I want to just also continue to stay on this topic, because when I was speaking with your company, and it was just a fantastic opportunity, you talked about mentorship, and you have a mentorship program that you've incorporated in your company. Can you just briefly talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. So kicked it off about 3 years ago, and I took that from what Sharon Orlock had worked with me on. And it's, as I said, it's a 12-month program, but she goes through and gives a laundry list of what mentors can provide mentees and how mentees can get the most out of the program. And again, at the end of it, you have a check-in quarterly, but you meet monthly, but you have a quarterly check-in to see, how is this program going? Are you getting out of it what you need? Am I getting out of what I need? And are we being successful on our roadmap? And to your point, like, are you staying in your lane to get the most of what you need from this leadership perspective? So yes, it's a 12-month program. Our president of Delek was just blown away with how it works. As you heard, when you came and spoke, Bruce, you really inspired that entire leadership team to see the bigger picture. And no different than what you did is what takes place in that mentor program to help individuals who are being, as mentees, to grow into larger scopes or landscapes. And without someone today really taking the time to put their arm around somebody and do that, they got to go through trial and error. But if they have a mentor, they can help avoid some of those bumps in the road and maybe bypass or get in the HOV lane and miss some of those bumps and bruises that they wouldn't have to hit. So what a great opportunity to go through that 12-month program. And then there's a graduation ceremony at the end for meeting all the requirements for those 12 months. But it has book reads, it has field trips. You get to go to different areas so you can see different perspectives other than just what you work in day to day. And I really think that makes it robust.
Man, if you want to grow, I mean, who wouldn't want to come work for your company? That is absolutely brilliant. And speaking of brilliant, I want to talk about this book, Be Brilliant in the Basics. I'm gonna hold it up so everybody can see the book. And
Yes.
I would love to just kind of stay here for a few minutes
Sure.
because as I read this book, it says, of course, Be Brilliant in the Basics is the title, but finding success in retail through detail.
Yep.
And what's interesting about this is that this is really more than a business book, because some of the chapters, for example, talks about being brilliant in communication and being brilliant in other facets along the way. And one of the areas I had actually put a note, I wanted to just kind of read a little script. It's called The Silent Treatment. And you talk about often you've seen great leaders in retail when they're faced with difficult conversations and they avoid communication. And I think people will relate to this. And you talk about things like that. You also talk about being brilliant in personal accountability. So I would love for you to just kind of start, number one, Congratulations. This is outstanding. It's brilliant. But number two, why can you share why did you write this book, and what was that process like?
Yeah, so my mom taught school for about 40 years. And in 1997, she developed Alzheimer's. And she actually went to a classroom, Bruce, and no one was there. And her principal happened to walk by and see her sitting in a classroom by herself. And he went in and asked her, said, "Miss Goss, what are you doing?" And she said, I don't know. So he called me on the job and told me, "Hey, your mom was in the wrong classroom today. Her kids were actively doing their work, so they didn't want to make sure she didn't get in any type of trouble because they knew something wasn't quite right." And that's when we realized she had dementia and had, long term would have Alzheimer's. So at that point, I moved her in with me, and then from 1997, she lived to 2015. And to be honest with you, as I reflect on it, I was in her hospital room the last day she was alive, and one little tear rolled down her eyes, and she held my hand, and I was brushing her hair, and I said, "Mom, I love you." And she closed her eyes and she passed. Well, I don't have any other immediate family, and I wanted to leave a legacy behind because I felt like my mom touched so many people as a teacher. And even at her funeral, I had the privilege to facilitate her funeral. And so many of her students surrounded me after the funeral, and even 11 of her teachers that were still living. And these ladies were in their 80s. And they told me what a great person my mom was and how she inspired them to do better, how she would take conversations that were negative, turn them to positive. And multiple students came up to me and said, "Kelvin, if it wasn't for your mom, I'd be in prison or I'd be dead. But your mom invested time in me to teach me." And I thought, well, I'm a leader, and I want to follow my mom's footsteps to teach. And if something was to happen to me, what's the legacy that's left? Because our name would stop. And I said, there's one way that I can fix that. And I started writing the book the day she was buried. And then once, 2 years later, it was published. And I was so happy. And in the introduction, I mentioned that about my mom and, making sure that she's remembered for this and for helping me to be inspired to leave something behind, because she left something behind to touch people. And I wanted to do the same. So when that day in the future comes about, there's something left behind. And I hope if I inspired one person, then it was a great book.
Man, I appreciate you sharing that story. That came from the heart, and that's incredible. What a legacy, man. She'd be so proud of you.
Hope she would be.
I would love to hear just some stories about, what have you, obviously going through the book process and you publish it, you're excited, and then people start reading it and you're like, oh man, I hope they like it. And I was just curious what kind of feedback you've got. Have there been any moments where you're like, oh man, that's exactly why I wrote that? Or just share maybe a story or two about just some of the feedback you've got from it.
Thank you. And well, you asked a question earlier around one of the chapters I mentioned, the silent treatment. So coming up through the ranks, again, I told you, in my mind, I try to be observant, and I really like to. I'm more of I'm the type style. My style of leadership is I'd rather see a sermon than hear one. So I watch people thoroughly, and as I watch people, I try to observe their great habits and say, hey, I can do that. I can mimic that. And I would watch leaders sometimes avoid having crucial conversations with people who were underperforming day in, day out. They would come in every day knowing they're not going to perform very well and nothing will be said. And in that leader's mind, it's just that silent treatment. I just won't talk to you. I'll just avoid you. And I'll spend time with these people over here who are doing a great job. But little did that leader know, the people who are doing a great job is looking at the leader like, hey, you need to have a conversation with that person over here who's not pulling their load. And in my mind, that was definitely the wrong tactic, because I could see how it was dividing the teams, because all they expected as a leader and a leader was to have conversations with people who needed to perform better if they weren't, on purposely not performing. And so for me, I wanted to take that tack and say, hey, you have to address those type of conversations. And oftentimes when you would point out, here's the area of deficiency, I want to see you improve, you might see that person improve. And if you don't, then there's processes to help them improve, or maybe find another position, or it might not be a right fit for the organization. So when that type of conversation was related in the book. I've heard feedback from people saying, that's exactly what we needed to hear. And I wanted to share it with some ladies. Some organizations, some large organizations here in Dallas actually have given this book to a lot of the leaders. And I wanted that feedback. And so some of the best feedback I got was around servant leadership, which helped people kind of put their title away and remember, you want to go and inspire people and kind of do a checkup from the neck up on your people every day. And if you see their demeanor, their character is kind of out of line, you as a leader are in a position to notice that and do something about it. Or you can ignore it and give it this silent treatment, and it'll impact productivity. So it doesn't matter if it's retail or any organization. Leaders have to face those tough conversations, and the team's expecting them to do that because they're the leader. So good feedback there. And, I tell you, I watch the Amazon charts every day when I launch the book. Where do I rank? Where do I rank? It's changing by the minute. And when you hit, I got a snapshot of it where it hit number one day, and I was like, oh man, that was perfect. But really to realize, it's short-lived because there's always books being written, but you celebrate that moment and celebrate the win.
Oh man, that's great. That's so funny. When you write a book, you're right. You're looking at the Amazon, you're like, hey, did somebody review it? Is it a good review, bad review?
Absolutely.
Oh man, that's fantastic. One of the chapters I wanted to also, and by the way, this read, folks, is a 120 pages. I mean, this is a quick read. And that's one thing that I love about it too. You can get it and, read it if you're traveling or just, want to sit down one night and just go through it, or you can take it bit by bit, a chapter at a time. So for example, chapter 7, I want to throw this out there. Chapter 7 is be brilliant in job readiness.
Right.
In job readiness. And I was thinking about this two-part. Number one, we always talk about preparation, the importance of preparation. But this could also be, right now we have an unemployment rate of, 12, 13%. And so there's people out there right now that could read this and it might help them whenever they're trying to get that next role. Would you agree with that?
100% agree, Bruce. And I think you're spot on. Job readiness to me, as I was having an opportunity to think through this and put it into print, is that we have to be on stage almost all the time. So we think about going to Disney. And when we used to go to Disney, you'll never catch Mickey with his head off or Donald with his head off. They're ready all the time to provide a great experience. As leaders or as associates, we want to deliver a daily kind of in our DNA, hey, that's a performer. And that person's ready because you truly don't know what's around the corner all the time. But whatever comes around that corner, when it impacts you head on, you have to be ready. And what I found is when people prepare themselves and really find how do I continually sharpen my style, continually enhance my style of leadership, or as an associate, just my line level work. When pandemics or chaos hits, your name still is at the top to say, hey, I know we got a cut here, but I really want this person on my team because they definitely bring me a return on my investment. And when a person positions themselves so you don't find yourself in a situation where something crazy hits in life and then they have to start making certain cuts, dramatic or whether they're not so dramatic, that you're at the bottom of that list of people like, well, it's okay, let them go because they really don't produce very much anyway on the job. So every day we have a chance to differentiate ourselves and be job ready, whether it's keeping our resumes posted, staying very well connected on LinkedIn. Just our relationship, for example, just meeting you has been robust in what that feels like. So if you ever get that call and someone says, hey, unfortunately, we're having to downsize, we're having to do X, you have people in your network that you're job ready that you can call and say, hey, here's what just happened. You know anybody or do you have anything that might work for me? And then that all of that anxiety is minimized because you were job ready from my perspective.
I absolutely love it. Folks, this is called Be Brilliant in the Basics. I'm going to put the information in the show notes so you can go out there and purchase the book. I mentioned when we kicked off the show that I met you when I saw you speaking. So you're speaking at the HR Southwest Conference. And I thought, man, this guy, what I noticed about you was a couple of things. Number one, you were dressed for success. You were dressed for you. But number two is you just had this like passion of joy. around you. And I think people are attracted to that. And so I was just wondering if you could just share, number one, when did you start speaking? And then number two, if people wanted to hear you, what are some topics that you typically would speak about?
Well, I've had the privilege to speak for quite a few years now. I've had audiences as small as 10, up to I had the privilege to speak to about 10,000 people in
Wow.
Houston, Texas. And what I will share with you, I learned the speaking ability. I'm a fan of, as I told you, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one. And when my mom passed and my brother passed tragically in '88, I wanted to take the time to really read the scriptures and understand what's in the scriptures for me. And what I really loved was the greatest man who ever lived was a great teacher. And I loved his teaching style, where he was using analogies or illustrations. And so I tried to really watch great speakers and see how they leverage that, and especially tie it back to the greatest man who ever lived, how he was able to captivate audiences. And even he said, quoted, "Never have we heard a man speak like this." Honestly, when you know your audience and it's coming from the heart, you have a great opportunity to land a message that could help someone's life be better. So for me, what I love speaking about is around leadership, around character, and core values for you personally. Everybody should have their own set of core values, and they should supersede any organization. But it should only be enhanced that people can see in an organization that you truly have those certain core values around integrity, around honesty, around passion for winning, etc. And I love those topics, but I really try to land a strong message around how you can take your current level to the next level by applying some basic principles every single day in your life. And how you show up is how people will view you. They say if the zebra shows you his stripes, you better believe it. So it's the same way with your ability to win. I don't know if you remember the Dream Team, Bruce, but with
Of
Michael
course I do.
Jordan.
Michael Jordan. Are you kidding me? Come on.
Yeah. But you know what? They never went on the court and wondered if they were going to win. They went on the court, and the only thing that was in their mind that they pondered was about how many points. Mm-hmm. And I love the mentality of when we go to speak, we don't get up there to understand, I hope I can inspire somebody today. We know we're going to inspire somebody because we have a story to tell that's relevant and impactful.
The question is, how many? I absolutely love it. I love that, man. That's great. Yeah. So, you're a leader, and leaders, they don't get time off, man. You're leading every day. And I was just wondering if you could share with the audience, if you could just share what's a leadership practice that you put in place that you do every day that helps you keep on track.
Oh, sure. Yeah. For me, I have to have a cadence, and I like structure. So every single day, Bruce, when I wake up, first thing I do is I pray. And I'm thankful that I had an opportunity to wake up. It's the last thing I do at the end of the evening. And I'm not trying to share any religious views or any of those things. I'm telling you what works for me. I start my day off with that. The second thing I do at 5:30 a.m. every morning, I'm in the gym at Fit Body Boot Camp, making sure that I truly can focus on my health and well-being. Because what I've seen in the course of time, if compared to athletes, right? Athletes train to perform for about 60 minutes to wow all of us. Well, if you're in the corporate world, you have to be a corporate athlete. You have to be mentally and physically fit. And what I found for me, that exercise gives me time to get my head clear, get ready for the day, get my mind right. And once I finish that little 30-minute exercise, I come home, try to eat a healthy, lean breakfast. And then from there, I prioritize my day. But the first thing I try to do initially, as soon as I get out, and I try to have this cadence every day, is send a little note or message to my entire team that we're going to have a great day. Whatever comes at us, we're prepared for it. And you were a winner when you started this day, you're going to be a winner at the end. Let's just give it our best. Any little momentum, that you can kind of provide on a daily basis, because you and I both know the moment you start your day or you walk out the door, something's going to be trying to pounce on you to derail you, discourage you, cause you to go in the basement. And I call it the balcony and basement mentality. Anything I say to you, Bruce, is going to do one or two things. It's either going to put you in the basement, you're going to drop your shoulders, you're going to not really be your very best, or I have the ability to say something to you that puts you in the balcony. And in the balcony is where everyone around you, your family, your friends, your workmates are going to get the most out of you, because you got that balcony type mentality based off of something I said to you. And even if it's positive reinforcement or constructive criticism, if I do it the right way, I still can leave you in the balcony. And that gives you a chance to perform at your best. And so for me, my daily task is a priority. Whatever I try to prioritize, put it in my calendar. I live by my calendar. Because ultimately, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And if I don't have that calendar, I'll find myself doing it.
So is that a paper calendar, or is that your phone, or is that both?
It's both. It's my phone, because it's the phone. You know, today's technology. Years ago, it was yellow pad, but today, yeah, it was yellow pad for sure. But and when I think about, we're so well connected today. There's no reason for us not to be organized and structured and how we want to prioritize the thing. Will there be something to derail it? Absolutely. But you do have a plan. You got to work that plan, and you can truly make it a successful day. But a lot comes at you fast, and so you have to have it kind of structured. And I just prioritize by what's most important, what's most relevant. And even especially with this pandemic, working remotely, I have to be more on purpose about communication and having great meetings, because we have technology to stay just as connected as we did if we were walking up and down the office.
Yeah, we may even be more connected just with technology, because everybody thinks you don't have anything on your calendar, so they're like, "Hey, let's connect." So no, that's good. Purposeful, being intentional. That's great. You know, we've talked about a lot of, man, we've talked about some good stuff, some great wisdom here. But I would love for you to just share what's some advice that you were given at any time in your career that you see yourself giving to others along the way. Could you share that with the group?
Yeah, you know, Bruce, for me, I think about this one word. It's called lanyard, and it's a word from Louisiana, if you've ever been there. But if you ever walk into let's just say you walk in, and I know it's not the most healthiest place, but you walk into a donut shop in Louisiana and they say the word lanyard, instead of giving you a dozen donuts, they're going to give you 13. So basically, define lanyard just means a little something extra. So I would share with any leader, if you truly want to grow your career, look for ways, a little something extra every single day. It's amazing how that little inch will go further. You know, and I would tell this to any leader. If you set goals and priorities and you feel like, okay, I got a good plan, I got good direction, I got alignment, I got clarity and commitment, then how can you possibly miss that goal? Well, the only way you will miss that goal, from my mind, Bruce, is you'll miss it by 12 inches. Because it's only 12 inches from your brain to your heart. And in my mind, I want to get those 12 inches right. And that means a strong mental focus, a strong health focus, because for me to get my best on the job, I got to have the right health. So I would encourage any leader who's striving to do their best to really focus on, you know, we heard the old cliche, you are what you eat. There's a lot of truth to that. And so if you're going to lead organizations and lead people, you want to be in the best mindset. So to do that, focus on how's your health. So that way you're making great decisions for yourself, for your team, and you have the stamina for all of the chaos that's going to come at you in a single day.
I love that. I love the little something extra. So can you, so did you call that lanya?
Lanyap. It's spelled Lagniappe.
Lanya. I love that.
Lanyap.
That's fantastic. A little something extra. I love that. That's fantastic. Man, there's so much there. I got to tell you, I know there's going to be some people out there that say, you know what, I needed to hear that right now. It's Tony Bridwell mentioned last week, it's a timeless message at the right time.
Right.
And I love that. So we got just a few minutes left. I want to finish off with what I call it's time to accelerate. And I just want to ask a few questions. So obviously you've written a book. This is a podcast. Do you prefer books or podcasts?
I like them both. I really have been enjoying Dave Ramsey's podcast, and I haven't signed up or anything, but I can tell you that practical wisdom and advice he's given me has been instrumental in how I've taken the first and second quarter of this year. And I was, you know, truly trying to set myself up for a better future. But at the same time, this pandemic came, and it couldn't have come at a better time, as I was trying to focus on some of the things and have made some really great decisions based off of what I heard from this podcast.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I loved his book, The Total Money Makeover. Is really, really good. How about favorite food?
Seafood all day. I love seafood. Any type of, I love any type of seafood, whether it's salmon, whether it's crab legs, scallops. I love them any way I can have them. I could eat them every single day.
I know before the pandemic, you were doing a lot of traveling. Is there any
Right.
particular place that you enjoyed traveling to most?
You know what? Anywhere that's tropical and, you can actually enjoy just the tropical weather and the breeze and see the ocean and see how wonderful our creator is to make all of this great stuff for us to enjoy. I want to be there wherever that's at.
That's fantastic. I want to ask you one final question. And I like to ask this to all of my guests. And the question is 10 years older Kelvin. He shows up at your door today. What's he sharing with you?
When I opened that door and I looked at 10-year-old Kelvin, this is what he would say. I want to thank you for being on purpose about taking care of me mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, so that you could live your very best life based off of the decisions that you made. So it's amazing that we still look the same because of the work you put into yourself. And your mind is in a good place. And most importantly, it's not what you gather, it's what you scatter. So you helped a lot of people in 10 years to live a better life.
Well, I know you're going to help a lot of people with the wisdom you've shared on the show today. You're definitely driving in the leadership lane. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being on the show. And most importantly, I want to tell you I appreciate your friendship, Kelvin.
That same here. And that's the most highest honor I think I have, is to have you in my network. But even higher than that is to have you as a friend. And I really appreciate it. And I said it in my book in my last chapter, and I mentioned Colossians 3:23. And I really believe it's, whatever you're working at, do it whole soul. That's the creator. And so I thank you for allowing our friendship to continue to cherish and be flourished and continue to have a mutually beneficial relationship.
Oh, man, that's awesome. Okay, so for anybody that's listening, they want to hear you speak, or they want to buy your book, or they want to connect with you. How is the best way they would get in touch with you?
Yes, sir. I give two avenues. Either LinkedIn. I love networking, love increasing my network. Very easy to access me from LinkedIn at Kelvin Goss, and it's from the Delek heading, Delek US. Or they can log on to BeBrilliantintheBasics.com and check out my website, and we can get connected from there. BeBrilliantintheBasics.com.
Love it. I'll hold the book up one more time, and I will put all the information in the show notes. And I know this is going to change people's lives, and I appreciate you sharing your wisdom today, your perspective, and thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate you, my friend.
It's an honor to be on. I won't forget it. Thank you, sir.